Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Let's just get straight to business. Videos for the week down here. It's pretty much just all Final Fantasy 1 uploads. Part 5 I should be uploading today on Sunday when I'm recording this. I need to upload it. It's already rendered, but it needs to be uploaded separately because I had a bunch of disconnects while I was live streaming that last part. And so I had to edit them all together and render them all into one file. So that's just what it was. This week I want to get back to doing some Final Fantasy 14 videos, especially because we know that the 14-hour broadcast is going to be happening, or they made a post for it on the Lodestone. The Yokai Watch event has been out for just under a week now. I have gotten the time to do it despite Final Fantasy Count Up. I got all 13 of the minions. I have 3 of the weapons. I did that about 3 to 3.5 hours. So I have some opinions about that event, and I'm sure some people are waiting to hear what I have to say about that. There's also a thread over on the general forums asking Yoshi P to step down from Final Fantasy 14. I'm like, are you crazy? It seems like a lot of people seem to agree that it's not Yoshi P that needs to step down. It's like just literally bring more unique and inventive ideas. I guess someone's just upset that the Yokai Watch event was Fates, even though I didn't know what anyone else really expected from it. I didn't expect anything other than Fates because that's literally the most comparable experience to catching a Pokemon, and that's basically what the Yokai event is. It's a bunch of catching Pokemon. And then what else do we have? We also have, there's like the gear armor things that the contests, and there's a cosplay. There's the announcement of the cosplay contest for the North American Fan Festival as well. So there's quite a few things to talk about this week when it comes to Final Fantasy 14 news. I definitely got to make some time to make those videos, even though I'm going to be incredibly busy at least until Wednesday between Final Fantasy Count Up Cast, doing some trials for the raid team that Miu is putting together for next tier. Tuesday with Count Up, State of the Realm, and then Wednesday is really the first time I'll be like readily available to do things. But that being said, I think it's time we answered some questions over on the Dream Network forums. As an update, there are about 10 questions on the forums. We're going to be answering a few from the live Twitch chat, so if you're watching here live, be sure to stick around until I tell you it's time to answer the Twitch questions. That's when I'll be paying the most attention. With that out of the way, let's get right to it. All right, first question. Mike, remember, it's A with 3 Y's. It is time where I need your advice, even if your answer might be a week or so too late. Well, I mean, considering I only do this once a week, that's kind of expected. But, well, opinions matter anyway. So I have a little off-screen text here because it is really personal. All right, cool. What I'm going to do is, I'm actually live. You know I live stream these now, so it's really hard for you to do that. So what I'm going to do on the live stream right now is I am going to cover it off the screen. I'm going to read it, and I'm going to come back and try to answer your question. So let's see if I can do that. All right, so your question very simply ends with, what should I do? I'm going to tell you I read this shit, and it's high school drama, dude. You just fucking ignore it. You literally just wrote me a giant sentence that sounds like it's straight out of, like, a high school classroom. Fuck that shit. You don't pay attention. You don't waste time with meaningless drama. If there's problems between friends, then you tell them, listen, I'm not going to waste my every day on this meaningless high school bullshit. If you're my friend, then cool, you're my friend. If you're not my friend, tell me now because I'm done wasting my fucking time with this shit. There's no reason to waste time, especially with online just drama over free companies, over who's your friend, who's not your friend. It's not worth any time. You know what's worth time? Being productive and moving forward. And anyone who holds you back from that, anyone who makes you even for a minute think, damn, I'm going to slow my roll and stop moving forward with what I enjoy and what I enjoy doing just because they want to go whine like a bunch of little kids, I am not wasting my time with that shit. Nope, not happening. That's my advice. Let's move on to the next question. All right, after that, next question. Hello, Mr. Happy. As a reward for taking the time to read my question, have a Brute Justice action figure. Can I get a Brute Justice mount instead? That would be way cooler. Can put it in various poses and fully detailed. Warning, not for children under 3 years of age, probably due to them swallowing small parts. Giggity. My question today is in regards to Summoner, specifically stats. A lot of times Summoner Abyss slot, that gives the most critical hit rate, already forces you to invest quite a bit of spell speed, but not a whole lot of determination. That's always been a big debate, spell speed versus determination. I personally believe them to be about equal. My question is to you, if you were forced to have spell speed by getting crit, why not go all in for the spell speed? The stat is not detrimental in any way. So it's very simple, because every job has set, I don't want to say set stat weights, they have calculated stat weights that people spend hours and hours and hours in our community calculating, and they are proven most effective. You're not just getting the critical hit rate because crit is the best stat. You're getting those pieces because they have the highest overall value in terms of off stats, in terms of how much it will affect your damage. Sometimes the side effect of that is that you get a lot of a stat that you may not necessarily agree with, or you may wonder, well, if I have this stat anyway, why don't I just get more of that stat? Because that stat isn't what's actually giving you your full-blown effectiveness. What I recommend you do is find out what the summoner stat weights are. I don't know if ffxiv.ariala.com has the most up-to-date summoner stat weights. If they don't, do some research around, try to find them. I think there's different stat weights for Garuda versus Ifrit last time I checked. That being said, figure out what those are, put them into a calculator, and then determine why these pieces are best. Are they actually best, or are people just blindly going for crit? And that's the important thing to figure out. Oh, by the way, there was also a PS. PS, are we ever getting the Eggy Glamour system? Yeah, Yoshi P told us 3.4 they were aiming to have the carbuncles in. Whatever that means, if it's just the 3 basic carbuncles, or, even just the 2 basic carbuncles, I don't know. But he said that that 3.4 would be the start of it, and they would try to be adding them in patches after 3.4 as well. Next question. Hey, Hap, not my first question, so have this coffee cake. You know, I don't think I've eaten today. So, coffee cake, welcome. Got a couple of questions, one serious, one silly, so enjoy. Do you have any advice for staying motivated whilst fate grinding? This sounds like a Yokai Watch question. Every time I go to try to get started in my anime, I just get bored. Netflix, YouTube, I catch up on like a series that you haven't watched in a while, or watch a new series that somebody recommends. Psych would be a great one. Mel introduced that to me maybe 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, almost done with season 5 at this point. I binge a little bit. It's like I watch like an episode or 2 a day, but like for the first few days I watched like 6-7 episodes a day, so it was a little crazy. Yeah, I don't recommend solely focusing on the fates though. Find something else to distract you on the side, whether it's music, movies, shows, YouTube, whatever, a live stream that you could watch maybe and just listen to somebody talk for a while they play some classic Final Fantasy games as part of a Final Fantasy count up marathon, something along those lines. You know, just saying, some random guy, could be anybody. But yeah, you probably want to do that. Hashtag sell it. Anyway, and the second question, there's 3 questions. How are you enjoying the Yokai event so far? Like I said, I only did it for about 3 hours. And it wasn't as bad as people said, but it's still about a 20 to 25 hour investment if you want to get the mount. It's only about maybe an hour and a half to a 2 hour investment. Otherwise, maybe, I'd say 2.5 hour investment if you want to just get the minions. It's not that bad. It's longer than most of the other events. It's just not, hey, do this one quest line and you're done, which is at least a little bit nice, but it's nothing in depth. I didn't expect it to be, like I said earlier. And 3, do you think any Final Fantasy XIV characters will ever appear in Kingdom Hearts? Probably not. I don't want to say that they won't, but I remember hearing somewhere that in Kingdom Hearts 3, there wouldn't be, I don't know if they said there wouldn't be any Final Fantasy characters or if there wouldn't be new Final Fantasy characters. I can't remember which one it was that I heard, but I have no source on that, so that could have been complete bullshit, to be honest with you. No, I don't think we'll ever see Final Fantasy XIV characters in Kingdom Hearts 3. And edit, hi, future me. Well, hello, future you as well. All right, next question. Hi there, Mr. Happy. Hi. I've been watching your guides and videos on YouTube for a while now, but first time asker of questions, so as a bonus here are all the grade 2 dissolvents for your 3.4 crafting needs. I really hope those end up going up in price. I will be so excited. 2 questions for you, and they both seem to be moderately long. 1, as a ninja, is there a base skill speed stat? Not really. There's not really a base one that you want to aim for. If you have more latency, it's nice to have slightly higher skill speed. The higher your skill speed really just makes it easier to fit your global cooldowns in your opener. Over the course of the fight, it's not good. It's not like it does nothing. It's just not a great stat, especially because of ninjutsu. If it ever clips the GCD, then skill speed starts to be detrimental to you. So if you have any lag, actually, I'm sorry, if you have any lag at all, skill speed gets even more and more detrimental because you're going to be clipping your GCD anyway. And since your GCD is shorter, you're actually clipping more into your GCD. So it's kind of rough. I wouldn't worry about having a minimum skill speed at all as a ninja. As for the second question, related slightly to the last question, I have a raid group, but we're really behind most others. Just finished Sephiroth. I want to move to Midas to get better gear, but no one seems all that interested, and instead want to move to Nidhogg, bypassing the gear from Midas completely. I don't want to transfer servers to get into new groups, as many local friends play with me on my current server. It will be worth my time to wait for cross-server raid. If you're okay, I'm going to ask you one very simple question. I'm going to ask, it's very simple. All right. Are you having fun? If the answer is yes, stay with your group. That's it. If you're not having fun, then you look to another group. I mean, here's the thing: the cross-server raid finder, as you said, isn't until 3.5. That's not probably at least till February, I'd assume. And even then, the final tier of Midas will have been out for like 3.5, 4 months by then. And the final tier of Alexander will have been out for 3.5, like 4 months by then. And this tier will no longer be relevant by then. So you really got to ask yourself, what's more important, raiding or playing with the friends? That's it. That's what I would say are your two factors, because, I mean, you don't want to leave and then not find a group is another thing, because you have no Midas Savage experience, which makes finding a group pretty difficult. And then even if you do find a group, odds are it's a group that has very little experience overall, and maybe they're incapable of clearing and you just left all the stuff behind. There's a lot of things to fear. So I'd say if the answer is you're having fun, stick with it. If not, then consider looking for another raid group. Okay, next question. Happity haps, long time viewer, occasional asker, so have a big ass iced coffee and all the yokai weapons. 2 questions, one with a rather long wind-up, the second one really short. But you'll probably have to think about it. Let's see. Question 1. A few months back I asked you on your thoughts if we'd be able to name one of our future weapons ourselves. Now I'm going to ask you again, but a bit more specific. Okay, I've realized that being able to type in a name yourself wouldn't make much sense. It would probably lead to a few rather stupid names. But the way that the Anima Quest is headed, I wonder if my wish came true, because who wants every sentient synthetic creature from its creator father? A name! If they restrict us to something similar to the Racing Chocobo name conventions, maybe just let us choose between 5 or 6 different names, that would be really neat. Especially if the current relic names are merely titles and not real names. TLDR, name your own relic weapon even within restrictions. Did your answer change? It still hasn't changed, because what's happening is you're taking the anima and you're implanting it into a weapon. You're not your anima's weapon, the actual anima itself is not the equivalent of the name of the weapon. The Sultan's Fist is basically the body for your anima weapon. The odds of you naming your weapon, it still ultimately comes down to naming your weapon. If they give us a choice to name the anima itself, like whoop-de-doo, it's probably not going to have any effect on anything unless the weapon eventually becomes the living anima, and that's just how it is. So I don't see it happening. I don't really see it making sense unless the anima itself becomes the shape of the weapon and is no longer just using the weapon in order to grow and survive, which is what it's using it for right now, in order to hold its ether together in the first place. And the second question, another hide-in question. Question 2, a question for you, the co-host, guest of State of the Realm, and of course for every viewer. So first of all, I'm the only one who can answer this, although the live viewers could also answer it as well. If you were able to name your finished anima weapon, what would its name be? I would name it, depends on what I'm playing, because I'm learning how to play Machinist right now, and my monk is my favorite. If it was the monk, I'd call them the Happy Fists. Giggity. If it was the gun, I'd call it the Happy Gun. I would literally name it something so stupid everyone would just facepalm, because they're like, I get it, because his name is Mr. Happy, and then I'm Mr. Happy, and then it's like, and then the weapon's name Mr. Happy, and everything it all just comes together. It all just comes together right there. So that would be the name for mine. It would be the Happy Fists or the Happy Gun. And it seems like Sick Denifer, Monado, Blade and Soul, Vag Destroyer are some other names, or I would call it Monk Weapon, call it Machinist Gun, like the Edgelord, Dat Boy. Any of these answers are perfectly acceptable. Read below after you finish the 2 questions. So now that you've mentioned the questions, I'll take back those yokai weapons. Sorry, man, but I'll need them myself. You can keep the iced coffee, though. Coffee is gross. Coffee's great. Hey, coffee's amazing. Especially my coffee. Hap Coffee. Buy it. Sell out. Alright, next question. Insert witty Mondays with Mr. Happy greeting. Awesome. No, wait, I can do better than that. Greetings, High Lord Happy, first of his name, the Numenon, not sure if I spelled that right, savior of the Gilgamesh iteration of Eorzea, denizen of the network of dreams, giver of guides, crafter of content, arc mind of the 14th finale of Final Fantasy. Your insight and inspiration is humbly requested. As reinstitution for your time and wisdom, I bequeath you perfectly timed procs on all classes. Excellent. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, 2 questions. 1, do you have any leveling horror stories from when you were first learning 14? So I'm going to let you know want to know what my leveling horror story was for Final Fantasy 14? I played 1.0. That is the entire horror story. That entire leveling system when 1.0 first launched. That is, I don't even need to name anything in particular. The whole experience was a horror story. Oh, want to gain a level? Well, 8 of you better go beat up this raptor that's two-shotting people and hope that it doesn't two-shot you before the fight actually ends so you get experience points. Yeah, because you didn't get experience points after you hit the max base character level. No, you also had to level your job character on top of your job level on top of your character level, which gave you your base stats, but then the job level was only gotten from actually getting random experience procs on any of your guards, any of your attacks, any of your spells. So hope you just fucking spam whatever it is that gives you stats, and that's the only way you're going to level. So, sorry. That's my Final Fantasy XIV horror story right there. Second question revolves around getting into streaming as a console gamer. Well, that's basically it, but the spirit of Jeopardy, I will phrase it as a question. What kind of things do you think people should be aware before going to stream? Technically, shouldn't you have... But in the spirit of Jeopardy, I will phrase it as a question. But in the spirit of Jeopardy, you would give me the answer, and I would phrase my answer as a question. So this is actually backwards. What kind of things do you think people should be aware of before getting into streaming? I'm pretty sure you had answered this before, but I guess what I'm wondering is, should I invest in a computer for streaming purposes, or can I get by with a console? So first of all, when you're first starting, use whatever you got. Because ultimately, unless you're going to be earning a living or you're doing it for more than one reason, getting a computer just for streaming, you're somebody who has no sort of to put it frank, nobody knows who you are on the internet. Like you play games, you have a few friends online, but nobody knows, and nobody's anticipating or waiting for you to be the person to stream. It is impossible to say that it's a sound investment to get a computer strictly for streaming purposes if that is the case. If you're going to get a computer, make it a computer that you can render videos on, or make sure it's a computer that can run all the latest games, or will be able to run games for the next several years. Make sure it's not the only reason you're getting it isn't just to stream with it. That I do not think is a good idea. Especially if you're a console player and you want to stream from the console to the PC, because then you need to go buy yourself a decent capture card, which is probably going to run you anywhere from $100 to $200, depending on what kind of capture card you actually decide to get. I think you're fine to get away with the console for now, as long as you have a microphone and people can hear you. I think that you don't need to have your video showing, and even in all honesty, there are some people that get away without the microphone. I think being able to talk to your viewers is just something that's so important, being able to relate to them, because having to stop playing and type to them every time they talk is way more difficult than it is to just be able to say, hey, what's up, dude? What's going on, man? Oh, welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for following. Oh, thank you for that awesome support, that tip right there. Oh, brand new subscriber. Great. Yeah, I'm just doing this right now. Oh, man, that's crazy. How the fuck did that guy die right there? It's way harder to stop and type that every time you want to type it than anything else. So I'd say if you're going to start with the console, see how it's going to work. And for general, with streaming, treat every viewer, this is the most generic advice you're going to get. Treat every viewer like a friend, like a family, because you want them to be comfortable there. You want someone to come in, don't make them muffins and shit, but they come in and be like, hey man, how's your day going? Oh dude, my day's going pretty good. I just got back from the DMV. I had to re-up my license. Oh dude, the DMV, that's fucking awful, man. God, how long were you in line for? Dude, at least 2 hours. Damn, did you get there right? Is it open? Yeah man, I don't know what it is. This DMV, doesn't matter when you get there. It's always going to be a 2-hour wait. I mean, that's the DMV though, right? You want to be able to have a fucking conversation like a normal person with these people. So definitely make sure to treat all of them like people, like friends, and have conversations with them whenever they join your chat. That's probably the number one thing. Do not ignore viewers unless they're super trolly. Then don't give them any of your attention, because you're just feeding into their trolling. Two biggest pieces of advice I could give right there. And make a schedule. It's hard to follow schedule at first, but try to make a schedule. And to follow it up, because my chat reminded me of another piece of advice that I've given very frequently, but I forgot to give right there. Learn to talk to yourself. Don't have that conversation with yourself. Don't ask yourself about the DMV. But be able to do things like, say things like, oh, I'm playing the game and the tank dies. It's like, oh man, dude, the tank died. That's the thing. He's only got item level 150 armor, so it's like he gets hit really hard. So I can see the healer. They don't even have time to DPS, and I don't know if this guy is using his cooldowns properly. You're just providing commentary. You're not. It sounds like you're talking to yourself, and people might think you're crazy, but that is easily one of the biggest things, because the last thing you want is for people to join a stream and for you to be dead quiet like this. Oh, hey, what's going on, man? Yeah, nothing much. There we go. Pretty much. There you go. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's boring as hell, and with the Twitch delay probably being anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute if you're not partnered, it's a 30-second to 1 minute delayed, 30-second to 1 minute delayed response every time, and you don't want to do that. Please don't do that. And it's funny because I actually already had the next question on the screen still while I was answering that question. So let's just move on to this next question. Hello, Happy. First time asker, have some Gilmore and potsherds. I don't need any, but grade 5 materia. It's always welcome. So you have stated you think there will only be 2 new jobs and you think one of them will be a DPS. Here's the problem I have with that. In my mind, it would be unacceptable to have another patch cycle where Warrior and Scholar have guaranteed party slots. Unless they overhaul the tank and healer meta, I think we absolutely need a new healer and tank to compete with Warrior and Scholar. So here's the thing. Adding Astro and adding Dark Knight didn't remove Warrior and Scholar from the meta. What makes you think adding another one will? Like, those jobs are designed in such a way that without granting near replicable abilities on other jobs or something that is equal or greater value that has a different effect, and that could be done on Astro. They could just add something that does that on Astro or add something that does that on White Mage. There's no way that to get those jobs out of the meta. It's just the nature of them. Adding a 3rd healer didn't stop it. Adding a 4th healer doesn't help it anymore. Adding a 4th tank doesn't help it anymore. Those jobs are just way too well designed. They're really overpowered. Yeah, they're really overpowered. So just adding another job just for the sake of adding another job to shake it up doesn't accomplish anything. You need to make sure there's actual change in balance, that maybe Scholar and Warrior are reworked, maybe Storm's Path doesn't do as much, maybe the healing on Warrior, the self-healing is brought down a little bit, something. You can't just add new jobs just for the sake of adding competition to other jobs. That won't work. There needs to be more to it than that. All right, next question. Hey, Haps, first time asker. How you doing, man? Yo, how you doing? Yo, I recognize that name. Really? Are you a first time asker? I feel like I've seen. Well, I mean, I know that name, but I swear I've seen you ask questions on the forums before. I guess not. Anyway, 2 questions for you. First, what do you think of Final Fantasy X getting a 3rd? Nope. Nope. Those no. I know that those were written and they were meant to expand and Sin's back and all that stuff. No. Hell no. No. Second question. For when 4.0 for Final Fantasy 14 hits, what are your thoughts on jobs getting traits instead of more skills? I ask because I feel like if we get more skills, there'll be 5 more spaces. So there's been a lot of discussion about that before. And that they probably will add a number of traits, but you can't just add traits because they're not that satisfying unless those traits are literally job changing, so much so to the point where it feels like you have new abilities. Then they're not a lot of fun. And not like that's impossible to do. That's actually quite easy to do, to make a trait change an ability in such a way that it's way more valuable. See Bard with Bloodletter. Remember, you don't have River of Blood until you get to, what, 48 or 46 or something? Or 42 even, somewhere in the 40 range. And then all of a sudden, Bloodletter it's a game changer for you. Just that 50% chance when you crit on a dot to get that reset is such a massive game changer for your awareness of your job. And it's very possible to add traits like that. Firestarter is a good example. Thundercloud is a good example, or were better examples, I guess, prior to Enochian. But that being said, I do think we will see new skills overall. I think what you'll see is the consolidation of skills, where skills that do similar things are combed out of jobs, or combo strings are put together onto a single button. Something to consolidate the abilities we currently have, and then add new abilities on top of that, because they actually flat out said, Yoshi P flat out said, if we add new abilities, it is impossible to expect anyone to use them, because there are too many buttons as is. And players are already struggling with Rotations 3.0. So we have to think of how we want to approach new abilities or traits in the expansion. He said something similar. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he did basically say that there's already too many abilities in the game, and that they add more, it's impossible to expect people to reasonably play them. So they're looking at a solution. We don't know what it is yet. I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. All right, next question. Yo, Happy, 2 questions, if you have the time. I do. 1, this is a lore point. that I might have missed or forgotten because sadly I rushed through the earlier parts of the game, not paying a great amount of attention till late. Do we know for sure how the Allegan civilization came to an end? Yes, we do. The Crystal Tower was a device that was used to absorb power from Dalamud. Dalamud was actually Bahamut entrapped, who was summoned by the Mericidians, who the Asians actually convinced to summon Bahamut, and also helped the Allegans with the technology in order to capture him. Once Dalamud was put in the sky and they were absorbing energy from Dalamud using the Crystal Tower, there was a spark that set off a massive earthquake that wiped out the entire civilization. On top of that, it also buried the Crystal Tower deep underground until eventually Dalamud would break open, Bahamut would break free, and it would reveal Crystal Tower under a large pile of rock in Mordona. So yes, that is how we know that the Allegan Empire ended. Excuse me. 2, in honor of FF Count Up event going on, can you share any general feelings about your favorite main Final Fantasy game? About your favorite one, not mine, yours. Okay. Final Fantasy VIII. I know there's still some time before you play it, and I heard your story about breaking the disc on another video. Yes, I think that was last week's video, or it might have been Final Fantasy Count Up. Final Fantasy 1 Part 1 or 2. I think it was actually during when I was playing Final Fantasy 1. If you want to save anything for when you actually played, it's my favorite, however, so I unreasonably wish to request more about it. So, Final Fantasy 8 was actually the first Final Fantasy I played. The first time I ever saw Final Fantasy was when I went to a friend's house and saw him fighting Ruby Weapon. I was like, what game is this? This looks amazing. He goes, it's Final Fantasy 7, dude. This is like one of the bosses in the game, and he keeps kicking my ass. And I watched him beat Ruby Weapon. He did the double summon Hades Knights of the Round trick in order to lock Ruby Weapon in place. I went home, and it was almost Christmas time, so I went to my family and I said, hey, I just got back from Alvin's house, and I would like to, I decided I want a Final Fantasy game. I don't know which one because I didn't know it was Final Fantasy 7 he was playing. He just told me it was Final Fantasy. And so they bought me Final Fantasy 8, and that was the first one I played. And I loved it when I was a kid, because I didn't mind the draw system. I was like, okay, draw this. I was like, okay, that's just what it is. I got the time for that. It's after school. I'm ignoring my homework. Great. Awesome. Nowadays, I can't stand that fucking draw system. I also didn't understand shit about the junction system back then. Don't know how I managed to beat Omega Weapon, to be honest. And so I just got hooked to Final Fantasy VIII. And looking back, it's definitely not on my highest list. It's one of those games that I kind of wish they would remake like 7, though, just because I think that the story is quite interesting. I think the world that Final Fantasy VIII takes place in is quite interesting. And I also generally just remember the graphics, how much better they were in 8 than 7. And I would just love to see those tuned up in such a way that it's just way more playable. And also, take that damn draw system. Do not, if you remake 8 Square Enix, do not leave the draw system in there. I want you to look at me in the eyes. I don't have my gunners on anymore because I lost them. Look, no draw system. I don't like the draw system. I don't want to ever see it again. When I get to Final Fantasy VIII and Count Up, I'm seriously contemplating using the magic booster because I don't want to draw. You don't understand. No, nope. Triple triad, that I like. All right, next question. Hey, Haps, have some bonus time for FF Count Up. While unlikely until the expansion does roll around, do you think Square Enix should expand on trash mob mechanics to make them both less predictable and a bit more challenging in dungeon content? I often wonder if they stick to the same dodge ground AoE's dungeon as a whole will become stale. Some already feel they have, which segs into a follow-up question. Could scaled up extreme dungeons benefit the game? Basically making it so tanks pulling the room and healers attempting to stance would be a serious risk, even a probable wipe since the mobs actually hurt. So, I've answered these questions. It's been a while since I've answered them before. So here's the thing. Square Enix almost sees dungeons as a repeatable chore. What I mean by that is, when people log into the game, they go, hey, I want to do these dungeons real quick to get some tomestones, and I feel like I made some progress. For that reason, they make them so they're moderately interesting or difficult, depending on your item level, but not something over the top that players go, oh my god, what the fuck, gotten so this tank is a complete piece of shit. At least if you get a really bad tank in the dungeon now, you could still get through it realistically. And everything just goes horribly wrong. For that reason, I have requested, or I have said that it would be okay to add a higher difficulty 4-man dungeon. The problem with that is that it is only artificial difficulty in the sense that you're just making everything hit harder. Because there's not much you can do mechanically. You can tune things a lot tighter, but there's not much you can do mechanically to make a 4-man dungeon that much more interesting. Yes, you can add the gimmicky things like we've seen in other fights, and they have done that in some 4-man dungeons in the past, like the jumping between platforms and the Kraken and the last boss of Sorkai. You have the things like the cannons in Steps of Faith or in Stone Vigil hard mode. Things like that are gimmicky and they're fun, and they do make the dungeon experience better, in my opinion. Palace of the Dead is a giant gimmicky dungeon, to make it as an example. That being said, in terms of like interesting mechanics, you're not going to see a whole lot. You can't do tank swaps reasonably. You would just basically have bigger tank hits, more healing required, and tighter DPS checks, and you basically have all the same mechanics, and maybe add more mechanics on top of what's already there. I don't really see it being super beneficial, but I see people at least saying, hey, this is that thing you asked for. We gave it to you. Some people like it, some people won't. Whatever, move on, and you done so. And then on top of that, stance dancing is always going to be a thing. Like even if in Alexander Savage, stance dancing is a thing, it's going to be a thing even in a harder 4-man dungeon. I'm just saying, no matter what, it's going to be a thing. All right, and the final question we have here over on the Dream Network forums, sup haps, thanks for all the great advice. You can have your greatest desire anyway onto the question. My greatest desire? That bacon chocolate cake I had at that one wedding that Mel and I went to was so good. I'll take that. I'm thinking of maining Astro once I get far enough to unlock it, but after watching your comparison video, it seems lackluster. Do you know if it has been buff fixed yet? Because of the Reddit people seem to have no problems with it anymore, but I never noticed any changes. Yeah, it's in a much better spot nowadays than it used to be. That being said, it is still kind of looked at as kind of like the dark horse of the three. It's way closer to White Mage's efficiency than it used to be, but it still lacks some really basic things. It lacks, it lacks some things, and it has specialties and other things. For example, it has 5 yalms less on the AoE, which doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but to a lot of people, it's a huge deal to not be able to hit that extra 5 yalm area around the radius. It also doesn't have the same efficiency in terms of its oh shit buttons. It also has a lot of just RNG to it, when it's effective, when it's not effective. But what it makes up for is it has insane mobility, great mobile healing, great instant healing, great instant application of effects, and it has the amazing buff Sinistry, which is just such a massive healing buff that like it's such a great ability. So they are a lot closer, and their personal DPS is also lower than both Scholar and White Mage. That being said, compared to Astrologian, which you usually compare Nocturnal Stance to Scholar, it's not good. Nocturnal Stance just doesn't stand a chance compared to Scholar. Between deploying the Eloquiums, between the Fairy being basically the secondary permanent manaless just pet that just pumps out healing and buffs, it's impossible to compare an Astro to a Scholar in really any sense of the word, unless you're literally drawing bowls all the time or drawing balances all the time, which with good RNG you can actually manage to do. They have their place. They're way better than they used to be, especially in the place of White Mage. The Astro Scholar combination is really, really good. They have some strengths and weaknesses that are different than White Mage and Scholar, but they are in a way better spot than they used to. I still personally think they need to more attention on the nocturnal side of things. In PvP, it's good, but it is still just not, in PvE, just not comparable to the power of a Scholar. All right, and on that note, that is the last question over on the Dream Network forums. We're going to close that on the screen. This is where I open the questions up to the Twitch chat. We answer a few of these, and then we wrap the question up. So if you're here live, get to asking your questions. When I see one that I like, I will just start answering it right away, pretty much. All right, so the first question we are going to take from the Twitch chat. Given everything that has been put into the game since 3.0 and on, what is one feature that you come up with or think that would benefit or be in the best interest of the players as a whole? PS, leave the draw system in there. So unfortunately, this is the super easy answer that you could give is more inventory space, or being able to have your Chocobo out while you're queued up for a dungeon, or queue up for Chocobo Racing and Triple Triad anywhere, or to have a lobby that's cross-server for Triple Triad and Chocobo Racing. Same with Lords of Verminion, or there's so many little things that we get every patch that are amazing, and there's just as many little things that we would love to see added. My personal one is more inventory is pretty high on my list. One feature, because this isn't, you're not asking me for a piece of content, you're asking me for a feature, which to me speaks to things like the bonus inventory. Maybe the ability to call retainers out in the open world. Some sort of mobile summoning bell item, even if it's consumable and it's bought with Grand Company seals, something along those lines. But something that allows me to, hey, my inventory's full. Instead of me having to either teleport back or go back, I can just do it right here out in the open. It's honestly, the availability of summoning bells is not such a big deal they're so readily available that it's practically like they're mobile. I would just like the ability to summon that retainer wherever I am at the cost of Grand Company seals, even if it's like 2,500 a pop, and be able to sell my items on the spot before continuing on with whatever it is I'm doing. I don't know. That's a little thing, and I don't think it's something they should really stress, but it's one of those features that's not really like the generic answers. I'm just honestly trying to give you an answer that's not the super generic, hey, more inventory, please. That's an achievement. You get a mount for it. That's really sad. All right, the next question we're going to be taking from the Twitch chat. Mrhappy, when the next FF MMO releases, what would you personally like to see, and do you think this time we move away from tab targeting when in control? You think they'll remove the instance nature in a new MMO? So, first up, new FF MMO. Will you still be playing MMOs in like a decade? Because you're not going to see another one for at least that long. I want you to think about that first. It's easy to think about that now, but in a decade, will you still be playing MMOs? It's a very honest question because sometimes things change with people, and MMOs are incredibly time-consuming, just an incredibly time-consuming hobby within the gaming industry. So first, ask yourself that. Second of all, the only way they make another MMO is if it's not a tab target MMO, because there's no point in making another tab target Final Fantasy MMO. That's literally meaningless. That's like if World of Warcraft went ahead and made another tab targeting MMO as well. Like, it's basically, why don't I just play WoW? I've already been playing that for all this time. So, if they do, I don't see them moving away from instances. Instances are a really simple way of giving people direction in a game. What you see with a lot of the more Korean MMOs that open up nowadays is they lack direction. And a lot of that is because they lack as much instancing as the things that people are used to. You got to remember, we're in a day and age where accessibility, quick accessibility is king. If you do not have something that is readily accessible to people, it does not succeed nearly as well as something that is readily accessible to people. That includes the ability to complete story, that includes the ability to do a dungeon, that includes the ability to understand a game's mechanics. That includes all the little types of things that we were just talking about in the earlier question, where little tiny like features and quality of life things. They're not just they're called quality of life, but honestly, without them, it's almost like for some people, things are like damn near unplayable. So you really have to consider all those things. I don't see them moving to anything that resembles anything even remotely close to Final Fantasy XI ever again. I expect it will always remain instance, even if it moves to an action-based Final Fantasy MMO in the next 10 years or so. Honestly, I don't even know where the MMO market will be 10 years from now. It's impossible to even begin to think about that, because the MMO market is in such a weird place right now where there's so many games populating it, and there's only so many people playing MMOs that even though the number of people playing MMOs has gone up, the number of people playing the same MMO has gone down. That's the common misconception. People are like, oh, MMOs are dying. Look at World of Warcraft. Look at Star Wars, how it went free to play. Look at WildStar. Look at all these Korean free to play MMOs. It's not that they're dying, it's that there's a lot more MMO hoppers nowadays than there used to be, and there's no sense of home, I guess. And the people who do have the sense of home, they're the people who stick with the game, and that's the game that they play consistently, and they'll play it however they want to. They'll buy stuff off cash shops, they'll hang out with their friends on the game. It doesn't matter. But there are so many more MMOs that, despite the fact there's more players, there's just less people in each game. It's impossible to maintain that number of people with so much competition on the market. So I think it will be the next Final Fantasy MMO, if there is one, will be an action one, but I honestly don't even know if there will be another Final Fantasy MMO after 14. I personally am not on the optimistic side on that one. All right, next question. So, Mrhappy, with the way gaming is changing in the current decade, hey, that's perfectly on par with the last question. Are there any troubling things that concern you regarding the industry? For example, the large focus on mobile games and trying to shift away from consoles or even PC. Honestly, I feel like consoles have gotten some steam back here in the West. I think console gaming is nowhere near. If you had asked people 5 years ago, where will console gaming be in 5 years? You know what people would have said? It'll probably be all PC gaming by then, or the companies will have basically just made computers that are labeled as, hey, the PlayStation 5 is basically a computer tower with interchangeable parts. It's modular, and you can keep it up to date. It's the last model we create. Maybe we make new towers, or we make customization options, but I honestly thought that was true. But the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, and with the NX coming out, which is looking to be interesting if it actually ends up being a mobile console, and I don't mean a handheld console, I mean literally a mobile console, something that goes from being handheld to something you could plop down and pull out controllers for. Then we'll see where that actually ends up going, but I don't think there's any worrying trends, especially not for TSM. But that being said, that was a meme. I'm sorry for the League of Legends meme, but I think that I don't see a problem with the shift to mobile. I mean, people have, like I was saying before, easy accessibility, number one thing. And the mobile market is already dominating in Japan. The console market is damn near dead over in Japan, which is why a lot of Square Enix has been saying Final Fantasy 15 could be the last hurrah for Final Fantasy on console in Japan. Because there's just, the demand for it is not there. The demand is for on-the-go gaming. That's why Final Fantasy XI is being remade as a mobile MMO, an MMMO, a massively multiplayer mobile online RPG. That is why they are doing that, because that is where they see the success. And honestly, it's hard to debate that. A number of the most viral games end up being mobile games nowadays. Like, you just can't avoid that. That is where the market is going. The only worrying trend, and I know if I don't mention this, people will hate me, microtransactions. That is the number one trend that worries most people. Does it worry me? No. Only because I see what's necessary. If you want to make a game easily accessible, what's the easiest way to make that game accessible? Make it free. Great. That's awesome. You're going to make it free. Anybody can download it. Anybody can start playing it. That means that anybody could get hooked to it. It's literally the smartest thing that you can do. The problem is when the microtransactions kick in and they're either excessive or there are certain details that make it feel like an incomplete game. But to be honest, what I think should be happening with every game, make it free to play. If it's a game that it's online and you're supposed to play it continuously, whether it's a mobile game or it's a PC game or it's a console game, make it free. And then, if people like it, give them what's called a full game edition, where where everything is unlocked for the full game, and the free basically just said, hey, this is your taste of the game. Think of it like a demo, because that's basically what free-to-play MMOs do nowadays anyway. A free-to-play MMO starts free, great, you could try to play it free forever, but eventually if you're not spending money, it feels like shit. But the thing is, as long as you can get with a bulk of the game for that $30 to $60, that easy accessibility on top of that income that comes afterwards, probably gonna work. But then if you do that, you have people who just say, well, fuck that, they're scamming me. And it's like the market is moving in one direction, people aren't moving, or the vocal people, the vocal whatever they want, it's not a minority on the internet or moving towards it. And everyone just complains, I gotta buy inventory space, I gotta buy this little minion that picks up loot for me. And it's like, yeah, games can absolutely get over the top with that stuff, but it is where the market is moving. It is what is going to happen, and it's going to just happen more and more. It's unavoidable. Games are getting more expensive to make. They're getting more expensive to publish, and on top of that, they have more games to compete against. So things are going to happen. Things that make companies money, because video games are a business first and foremost. It's going to happen. It's unavoidable. I hope you're ready for it when everything is in full swing, because we're already about 90% of the way there. All right, the next question I'm going to take from the Twitch chat. Mr. Happy, what would it take for you to have interest in virtual reality gaming? Not much. I've actually tried some VR games, and so here's been my experience. I'm going to go down the list. Adrift was the first VR game I've ever played. And while it was incredibly immersive, it also gave me a sincere sense of motion sickness. I honestly say that was more because of just the type of game it was, where you're like free floating in space. Honestly, I think that is just a nauseating experience for me as a whole, and that it captured that in its entirety. So that was my first experience with Adrift. But every VR game I played after that, I've not gotten motion sick, and I've not had headaches at all. That was Wayward Skies for the PlayStation VR. I tried that at PAX East. Thank you, Steve, for letting me try that out. He actually tried to stop me while I was in the middle of doing some roaming shoutcasting for Ark. Yeah, that's right. And then after I was done with Ark, I went over to him and apologized, because I had to be like, sorry, I can't do it right now, or whatever the heck you're calling me over for. I'm a little busy. And then, so that was actually really good. That was more of a puzzle game, but it had a great sort of, you were almost like the overseer, like you were guiding a character, almost RTS style, while also figuring out first-person puzzles and things like that. That was really fun. I played a third-person VR game over at Insomniac Studios, which I lost my footage for because I didn't record the footage the way that I thought I did. And that was fantastic, believe it or not. Third-person VR was kind of a strange idea to me. Basically, the VR acts as the camera, but you're controlling a third-person character. So imagine if you're walking forward, but you're running, but you're also looking behind you with the character, but it's in third person. On top of that, you use the VR to aim, almost use it as your crosshair on top of that. So if you wanted to throw a rock, you have to look exactly where you wanted to throw it that way. And the atmosphere, being able to take in the whole atmosphere other than behind you, honestly made it even more terrifying because you could see all the moving parts and how it was all going to kill you. There's so much anticipation. On top of that, I also played, my favorite one so far was another game from Insomniac. It was called The Unspoken, and it's a 1v1 magician PvP game with the touch controllers for the Oculus. And basically, you're able to hurl spells with one hand, you're able to block with a shield on the other hand. That shield obviously has a limit. You're able to teleport between platforms using the analog sticks. You're able to pick up power-ups, you're able to summon a giant golem if you fight over the objective on the map. And on top of that, you can open a spell book and pick from the spells, and then you perform an incantation. Like for the shield, you had to draw a shield on the screen. For the birds, you had to hold the bird up and then just tap it over and over again. For one of them, you make like a little paper airplane. You have to fold the paper and then throw it. One of them, you have to bang an anvil to make a javelin, and you have to throw the javelin. That was ridiculously fun. I could have played that for hours and hours and hours. That game was a ton of fun. The only problem I had being that it was PvP only, so it was kind of like, if not a lot of people are playing this game, how the hell am I ever gonna like actually enjoy it? And that's the thing with VR. If a lot of people have it, it'll be good. If not a lot of people have it, then these games that are designing them to be anything PvP related, it's going to be impossible because like there's just not a big enough pool of people playing it for you to reasonably expect that people are going to own this game. It's like expecting all your friends to own an Ouya. That's never going to happen. So it's going to come down to when the price point really drops. And I think the PlayStation VR might be that point. For only $300, people are way more interested in that than dropping $600 to $800 on an Oculus or a Vive, which by the way we own and don't even use. So I don't know. I've enjoyed the VR, most of the VR experiences I've had. It needs to be more affordable. I think that's the one thing that it needs right now, and that's going to be hard when it's still early in the VR development phase. All right, and moving over to the last question we're going to do for this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Mr. Happy, sorry, going to ask it again. Would you like to see consumables like poison potions, paralysis, burn items used again in the next raid tier like they were back in Coil? Something that break the mold of just rotating, burning, and giving the aspect of item usage and raid coordination like single-player RPGs used to rely on. So it would have to be done very carefully, but yes, I am one that is for consumables. I remember back when people were using poison potions because they actually worked. They do not work at level 60. There was a divide. If you were someone who said, oh, poison potions aren't worth it, and then somebody would bring you the calculated damage over 8 people using a poison potion over the course of a fight, and you go, okay, that's reasonable, but like that's just 1 to 2% of a boss's HP. And then you look at that person, you go, how many times have you died to a boss at 1 to 2%? Bet you wish you had poison potions right there. And for me, it's always been, if there's something that will make the fight easier, something that will boost your DPS, and you are unwilling to use it. If you can't afford it, perfectly understandable. If you can't and you don't have someone to craft it for you, again, perfectly understandable. You don't want to go broke over these things, you know what I mean? That being said, if you're someone who has like a billion gil and you go, I'm not wasting my money on those poison potions, or if you even have any reasonable amount of gil, or you have someone willing to make them, and you are unwilling to use any sort of benefit, that is a really poor attitude to have in a raid where 7 other people are relying on you to care. And you're hoping that the other 7 people care as well, because sometimes some of them don't care either, and just like, see, he doesn't do it either, and then it's like, you're just justifying it. So, would I like them? Yes. Would they? They need to be used more interestingly though, because poison potions are barely interesting to use. It's like, okay, my poison potion's up here. Do 30 potency a tick for the next 15 seconds. Ooh, such experience, such innovative gameplay. You know what I mean? So they would need to be more useful than that. They would need to be like paralysis on ads to reduce damage, or potions that added actual debuffs, like something that could accomplish the same effect as like a dismantle, for example. Oh, a potion that reduces the amount of damage that a boss does for 5 seconds, or maybe it slightly lowers their physical defense for like 10 seconds. Things that are really, really light effects, but that if people bring consumables, it makes the fight more interesting, because you then have to go, okay, time the potion, time the paralysis potion, time the burn potion. I think things like that are far more interesting, and no, they do not grindy. So yeah, I have a feeling that would be far more interesting to utilize than just the standard, let's just bring poison potions back. And they were called potent poisoning potions. Now we would need, well, let's see, they were called potent poisoning potions. So then we would have powerful potent poisoning potions. Those would be the next one. And then particularly powerful potent poisoning potions. And then I don't know. I got nothing else that begins with P. But anyway, that's my answer to that question. Thank you, everyone, for asking your questions this week for Mondays with Mr. Happy. Remember, we have the videos under the screen again. Again, it's mostly just Final Fantasy count-up stuff. State of the Realm is in there as well. So be on the lookout for more of that. Final Fantasy 1 will be finished uploading. Final Fantasy 2 I will start uploading this week. And I will be done with Final Fantasy 3. Actually, today, on Monday, that should be what I'm streaming when you guys see this video. So I'm looking forward to that because Final Fantasy 3 was a way shorter game than I thought it was going to be. It's way harder than I remember it being, and then we get to move on to Final Fantasy 4, which is a lot of people's favorites, and that from that point on, 4, 5, 6, like 7, and we start getting into the favorites range more, where more people have a favorite of 4 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, and I think that is where we're going to kill it. We're also making great headway on 1,000 subs. We're at like 946 or 947 as I speak right now, and we are making great strides to get back to 1,000. I'm still predicting it'll happen on Final Fantasy X, just like it happened last time, but we shall see. I'm enjoying the hell out of Count Up. Hopefully you are as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. I'm going to wrap up the YouTube side of this, and then I'll do a separate outro over on Twitch, just because I got to say goodbye to them and host someone and all that funky stuff. But anyway, thank you for watching over on YouTube. I'll see you next week, and until then, take care.